You got to crash an airplane every now and then to make them all safer. You just don't want to be on that airplane. And every time there is something in the world that causes injury or grief or trauma, then what do? We fix it.
Manufacturing built everything we touch, from cars to coffee makers. But behind the machines are real people with bold stories about the industry you never think about but can't live without. This is Manufacturing Runs the World. So how's it going?
You hit me at the right time, man. I'm in a good mood. Life is good. Backlog is good. Killer team.
I'm glad I caught you in a good mood. Did you create Arc Specialties?
Indeed. Back in 82, I started Arc Specialties in my garage, and I was making nothing during the day, and I would make 10 times as much at night building machines and welding parts.
Wow.
So I didn't quit my day job because I was learning too much, but I wanted to have something to do in the evenings and make money. So, it's the American dream, right? Start your own business.
Heck yeah. So you started making robots in your garage in the 80s?
Yeah. So first I was just welding and making parts. So I would do the exotic welding, gas tungsten arc welding, atomic hydrogen welding, things that other weld shops couldn't do and that I could charge a lot for.
Yeah, and I noticed you're in several industries. Is there any specific reason why you keyed in on those industries?
We like to eat, and so what we do is we try to keep everybody busy. And what I've observed is all business is cyclical, right? Because you can't control the cycles. The solution is to be in multiple industries, and hopefully they're counter-cyclical. And so any opportunity we have to jump into a new industry, I'm in. And I don't think you can name one that I'm not into, except for defense work for other countries.
I hear that. That seems to be the common thread, is that I've talked to a few fabrication shops now, and they're really serving every industry. So it's just kind of hitting on the head for me that manufacturing truly is the underlying industry running the entire world.
Indeed.
That being said, is there any major products or things that you guys contribute to building that would blow our listeners' minds?
A cool thing we're doing right now is putting robots on drill ships offshore. That's pretty radical. Just traditionally, robots sit in a factory that kind of bolted to the floor. And so when you put them on drill ships, all of a sudden they're out in the rain and the mist and the spray. So that's been fun.
Yeah.
I like older projects. So we're working on the next generation salt-cooled nuclear reactors. That's exciting for me.
Looks like you've developed a little niche in the hazardous work areas. Is that true?
What's the definition of a good robot job? Dull, dirty, dangerous. And the dangerous can be the overriding emphasis, for anybody to get into robots. And so we certainly look for those jobs, get the people out of harm's way.
Yeah, I haven't talked to anyone in that niche, so that is a cool spot that you're developing in. Is there anyone that can't live without your service? Is there anything you're building that contributes to keeping people alive?
Yeah, I suppose so, because frequently one of the ways we get a job is there's blood on the floor. Somebody gets hurt, and somebody decides that this is not a good way to do it. Because when a robot gets hurt, nobody cares. And so every one of those jobs, no need to be morbid, but I can think of at least a half a dozen jobs that literally were the impetus was an injury, and people may get upset by that, but the reality is, you got to crash an airplane every now and then to make them all safer. You just don't want to be on that airplane. And every time there is something in the world that causes injury or grief or trauma, then what do? We fix it. That's how it works. When the space shuttle had problems, we fixed it, and then we prevented it from happening in the future. So I guess every one of those cases, they need us.
That's so interesting that you've developed this niche from keeping people safe and saving lives by removing the human element from hazardous jobs. Super cool.
And I have a couple of customers that they're wanting to remove anguish from a factory. It's kind of interesting. They don't want to lay anybody off. And so they've intentionally gone to automation so that then when their business cycle goes into a trough, rather than lay people off, they just turn the robot off.
Turn the automation.
So
When
I think is much better than laying off the human.
Yeah, definitely. I've had to do my share of that, and that's never fun. When you're selling these to a client, are you planning out the whole thing for them? Like, these are the jobs that you can replace humans with. Here's how we can do it. Here's how we got to network it so it can work with your whole systems. Like, do you build that whole infrastructure for them?
Yes, no, maybe. So sometimes they'll bring us a very specific problem. How do you make titanium bulletproof? We don't know. So we go to the lab and we play, and then we develop the system. And sometimes they have a plan in place, and they just have to teach us the boundaries. Where do we start on the project? Where do we finish on the project? Are we material handling? Are we just welding? Are we painting? Are we drilling? Whatever. And then if we need a demo, that's why I've got a lab. We go play in the lab, and then we demonstrate whatever it may be. How do you drill holes to mount armor with a robot? And we'll go play with that, and then we'll express our opinions. And once again, the scope of the project still isn't fixed. It's very much a function of the customer's needs and their budget. So we can say, okay, here's what we can do. And sometimes they'll ask us to push that or reduce it. We don't care. So, the ultimate factory will be all connected into a chain, and the material will flow from receiving through the process to shipping. But we're happy to build just a cell that fits in there also. So it's literally up to the customer. And the other thing that happens is we'll get a crazy idea and we'll go play in the lab. And what I've told my daughter when she got her first B and she was upset, I said, well, look at me. I'm out of every 10 ideas we have, we go to the lab, 6 of them work and only 2 of them sell. Yeah. And so either that's a failing grade or a successful business, depending on how you look at it. So a lot of our stuff starts with our idea. And then we go to a lab and kind of prove to industry what we can do. And then we take it to industry. And that's the hard part, because it could be a matter of years before we get industrial buy-in. Because, when somebody brings you a solution to a problem that you haven't even acknowledged, it's a hard sell.
Definitely. Your career path is so interesting because you're basically just a lifetime inventor, right? You're doing it in your garage. Now you're just doing it on a larger scale to solve people's problems in the workforce. And you said yourself, you go back to the lab, so you're continuously inventing to help solve people's issues.
Oh yeah, we've got 2 projects rolling in the lab right now. But it goes all the way back to high school. All I did was build stuff. I built a steam engine, that ran. I built a flamethrower. I built a rocket engine. Those are different, by the way. And I built a wind generator that just took wind, made electricity. And what was funny was when I was a kid, I did not realize that people would pay you to do this.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was a hobby, and so it took me a while to get into the field, but in the end, I'm back to doing what I was doing when I was a kid, build stuff.
That's amazing. Are there any major pain points that you run into year after year?
Pain points, there's plenty. Some of them are self-induced. As soon as you said pain, I thought about way back when we were doing well after a couple of years, and so I got to the end of the year, said, hey guys, look, we got some money left over. Let's have a bonus, and let's quit asking for progress payments. Okay, the bonus wasn't a bad idea, but changing the payment policy was a terrible idea, and it took me 3 or 4 months to realize that cash flow is king, and progress payments is what financed it. And when you're a little company and you don't have any credit, the only thing that finances your progress is progress payments. And so all of a sudden, I put myself in a cash crunch. And at that point, I decided I would dig out of it and then go back and get a real job. But sure enough, after we dug out of it, I missed my godson's mother's wedding. I missed a lot of stuff, but we dug out of the hole that I had created because I was not going to file bankruptcy. That's just not the way I was raised. And after we dug out the hole, it was fun again, and so we kept going. But so that was a self-inflicted one. But nowadays, what happens is just business cycles. Right now I'm building a bunch of sand screen machines, for example, and these are great machines to build. We're the only ones that build one that'll weld 100 welds a second, and it's got a lot of features, and then we got a patent on it. So, and we're going to build 4 of them this year, and these are expensive machines, and that's great. And we built a whole lot of them 6-8 years ago, and then the business just went away. So you can't bank on this stuff. Fortunately, we backfilled that with other projects, but now they're back. So I'm tickled to death. We're going to be building sand screen machines again. And what's down right now? Automotive, oddly enough, for us, automotive's down. So we're backfilling a lack of automotive jobs with sand screen machines.
Yeah. Yeah, automotive brings me to a hot topic in manufacturing right now. Are the tariffs or the promise of tariffs affecting your business at all, or are you guys also doing kind of a wait and see how this pans out thing?
You can't wait and see. You got to keep making money. You got to keep working. All these families out here, there's 60 of them. They all want to be fed, and so we're not going to wait and see. That's not how we play. I did a blog the other day and I said, commerce abhors a vacuum. You heard the old quote, nature abhors a vacuum. Uh, and my point was the free market will muddle through one way or the other. So, for example, we just shipped a machine to Canada and we intentionally expedited the production and the shipment. Got it in the day before the tariffs were supposed to hit. I think they postponed them again. But so we're making some concessions like that. Though I don't approve of tariffs, I don't approve of protectionism. I don't approve of any of that. I'm a global free market capitalist. I believe everybody ought to have a chance to make a living. And I think the guy that can produce goods at the lowest price with the best quality should be rewarded, not some guy that happens to benefit from some policy that a politician makes. So I don't approve of the tariffs. I try not to worry about them. If steel prices go up, and they have, and I've got a couple of I-beams out in the shop right now. These are huge, like 36-inch I-beams. They're 40-foot long. We're building sand screen machines out of them, and they're labeled "Made in USA." And so I guarantee they're priced higher than they would have been without the tariffs. But we put it into our price, and we drive on.
So you just don't worry about it. It's just business as usual. You got to figure out how to get it done.
Oh yeah, life's full of problems. Sometimes we'll have a hurricane. Sometimes somebody will call in sick. None of that really matters in the long term.
Right. Now you mentioned you have a couple podcasts yourself. Do you want to speak about those? We could cross promote here.
Yeah, we had a marketing company, great guys out of Dallas, Market Scale, and they dropped them, and they really taught us a lot. And they had a great guy there that was their podcast host. And so I went up and was on his podcast, and I was so impressed with Tyler. I said, "Wow, I want to be you when I grow up."
Yeah.
And we continued. So we would do my podcast with him as the moderator, and it worked great. I'd bring on a third person, and he kept it rolling. And I kept observing his talent, his techniques, and then finally we said, we can do this ourselves." And so Johnny, I've got a great guy here. He does all my video, audio, website, trade shows, everything. He's a one-man marketing group, and he took it upon himself to take one of the spare offices. We built a podcasting studio. So we have what we call the Roboticist Chronicles. And so when we have somebody in that's involved in the robotics industry, we put them on the Roboticist Chronicles. We bring in the old guys that have been in forever. We bring the young guys in that have new ideas. We bring in customers that were, reticent about robots and finally bit the bullet, pulled the switch and got into it. But then we noticed that the problem with that is there's a lot of stuff in the world other than robots. I have to admit that. And so we started a second one, which would encompass everything else. And I call it Dan's Cadre of Experts, because what I've done in my life is build up my Rolodex with very talented people. And so we bring these guys on to explain whatever their area of expertise is under Dan's Cadre. This has been everything from professional hunters in Africa to senators in Texas and everything in between. And so we've had a whole lot of fun with both of these podcasts. Unfortunately, we don't have to make money with them. It's all about just building our image on social media, and it's working. I'll go to trade shows, people will reach out and they know us from the podcast, which is huge. It's hugely flattering, right? And as soon as I figured out, no, you don't have to know this person. Well, in every case, I encourage them to do the same, because it ain't that hard, right? And everyone has a story. You just got to get them to tell you.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if we've inspired anybody else to create podcasts, but I hope so.
Yeah, and I can certainly echo that statement there. I think I had some initial reservations about starting a podcast, but it has been a phenomenal way for me to meet people in the industry without having to do the trade show hustle. I would be gone every 2 weeks if I didn't also do podcasting.
Yeah, we got 4 trade shows on the books for this year, so that's a heavy year for us, and that's a lot of work. It's a lot of money, a lot of time.
Yep.
So if we can simplify that through podcast, I'm all in.
Is there any big misconceptions about what you do?
Yeah. The problem is people want me to solve their biggest problem. And that'd be lovely. Wouldn't it be great if you go to the doc and say, solve my biggest problem? Well, some things the docs can't fix, right? And they'd love to be able to cure cancer, and I'd love to be able to automate everything, but that's just not real. And so what do we do? Well, that means out of all the inquiries we get in, we got three answers: yes, no, and maybe. Maybe goes to the lab. But the no's happen more often than you guess. That's the biggest problem in the robotics industry. People will bite off stuff they can't shoot, projects they can't do. I always say the largest use of robots in America is dust collection. People buy them, they don't work. You put them in the back, they collect dust. And so that's not good. So how do we reply when people give us a job? They say, hey, we want a robot to move a little faster than the speed of light. That's not going to happen. And so we either tell them no, or sometimes we'll say, why don't you let us go through your shop? We have something I call MAP, Manufacturing Automation Audit Program. Big word, kind of nice acronym. But what it means is one of my engineers or myself, we'll start at your receiving dock, walk all the way through your manufacturing to your shipping dock. And what we're doing is we're looking at your world through the eyes of a roboticist. Okay. And so we see something that would be a good candidate for automation, we'll make a little note. We go all the way through the whole factory. A lot of fun for me and my guys. We love this stuff. Yeah. And then what we're identifying is where technology is available that will solve a problem. And I did this for a company down south of Houston called Easy Line. Great guys. They said, Dan, we got some welding problems. I said, okay. Hey, I'm here. Let's do a map while I'm here. I barely got past receiving, and the very first operation, they were using a magnetic template tracing cutting machine. And I said, that machine needs to be in the Smithsonian. That machine was antiquated when I got in the business in the 80s. Okay. And they were still using one. I go, let's fix that first. I went through the whole shop. And that's what we'll do on our maps is we'll go through the whole shop, and then we'll talk to you about the whole list that we came up with. But in this case, what we focused on was the cutting. So we went from magnetic tracers to robotic plasma. So it was flame, we went to plasma, it was tracing, it went to robot. Lo and behold, we installed this, and his welding problems went away. Garbage in, garbage out, right? And so all of his welding problems were actually part problems, dimensional problems. That it was fit up that was causing his welders to have trouble.
Right.
And so by solving his cutting problem, all of a sudden we fixed the welding. I have yet to sell him a welding robot. We have sold him 2 plasma cutting robots, so life is good.
Yeah.
So that's the misconception. If your roboticist says yes, they can do it, go make sure they know what they're doing. And if the roboticist says no, trust them. Don't ask them to do something they can't do. So I love doing this. I was down in Colombia last year. They had one little project for me. I said, hey, it's a long flight. Let's walk through your whole plan. And I came up with 12 projects. We've already done the one, and we're starting on the second.
Nice. Nice.
I love my job. The people that need robots are not robot experts. So they're tempted to believe that robots can do more than they're capable of.
Right. I just met with a gentleman. Now he's a distributor. The way that you're talking about solving the problems on the floor is the same way that he talks about it. Do you work with many distributors on some of your projects?
Probably differently than you're imagining. So the world needs technology. We're going to reshore, right? We're going to cut costs, particularly in a global market. It's fierce competition. I love it. And so that means each company needs advanced technology to be more competitive, whether that's process technology or automation, either one. And so there's a whole lot of people out there that provide all sorts of cool technology.
Yeah.
Robots, plasma cutters, welding machines, whatever, servo motors. And a lot of those distributors are out there talking to those end users. And the end users are explaining what their problem is. And this distributor might say, yeah, my CNC system would do great. And the customer might agree, but somebody's got to make it work. And so I've got the world's largest sales force They all these guys need somebody like us, a system integrator, robot builder, to take their stuff and make it work. Because the last thing they want to do is sell stuff to a customer and the customer fail to integrate it properly, and then everybody's mad at everybody. So we're the intermediary. We are the systems integrator. Great example was early COVID. We got the double whammy down here in Texas because everybody shut down for COVID and the oil industry cratered.
Yeah.
So that wasn't good for us. So right about that time, some of the EV guys had an interesting problem involving castings. And they needed to be able to process these castings quickly. So they went to Hypertherm. Hypertherm is the best company in the world, in my opinion, on plasma cutting. And they're also very good on motion control as long as it's in a plane. But when it gets to 3 dimensions, they don't take it. And so this EV companies explained they wanted to do actual 3D cutting. Well, all of a sudden there's a place for us in the world. So we use their plasma, our motion control technology, and we built 13 robots to plasma cut these aluminum parts. Because when you're casting things, you have to trim them. So how are you going to trim them? And since this is all new, radical stuff, there was no paradigm. We needed some way to trim them. And so now the standard is what we developed, which is robotic plasma cutting of this stuff. We would have never found these guys had they not gone to the premium plasma company who sent them back to us.
How do people work with you if they want to work with Arc Specialties? How do people work with you specifically?
Phone call. 713-906-1171. Call me. And then I love chatting about projects. And we'll either tell you yes, no, maybe. And if it's maybe and it's justifiable, we'll go to the lab. We'll do work in the lab for free as long as it's quick and interesting. If you need a big report and a lot of testing, then we have to charge you. But it all starts with a phone call. It's the only thing there is in the world is human beings. And
do you have any parting words for anyone looking to get into the industry?
This is a wonderful country we live in. You can start a company in your garage with a welding machine, and 40 years later, you got 60 people, and you're working in 33 countries. That's a great thing. And so, you guys out there that want to start your own deal, go for it. And I wish you the best of luck. I hope you have as much time.
Awesome. Well, Dan, thank you for your time. Looking forward. I'd love to continue the conversation and keep chatting.
You say you still do trade shows, so if you get to Houston, please stop by. I'd love to give you a tour and also put you in the podcast studio.
Yeah, I'd love to be there. I'm going to take you up on that. All right. Well, have a good one, Dan. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, sir.